how I would design a demand engine in B2B. And of the 5 things I put in the design, digital is the last, and actually uh, probably an area I would invest very little in.
Welcome to Demand Dialogues. I'm Peter Murphy, CEO at Datamatics Business Solutions, and we, amongst other things, are a business service provider in B2B marketing. This podcast is aimed primarily at the B2B marketer, and we'll cover a lot on demand gen functions, although not exclusively. We'll also have some topics for those that are connected to those roles. We will look at the changing organizational structures, at the techniques, the solutions being tried and proven with various experts in the field to provide you with valuable insights during your lunch, your workout, your commute, or however you choose to listen to this. The topics will range from macro to micro, a view of how startups are doing things, to those that are working with Fortune 100 organizations. And if you're not in marketing, but need to work with marketing, you've come to the right place, whether you're in sales, but also customer success, in product management, maybe head of finance trying to figure out why is marketing spending all of my free cash flow. We hope there'll be something in it for you too. At the top of the show and in our online description on the various platforms, we'll highlight a couple of the themes that we intend to cover, and then we'll get to the meat of the conversation. And there can be no better way to kick things off with our first guest, someone who's been at the forefront of marketing and innovation and marketing for over 20 years. He's been with companies like HCL, SAP, Market and Markets in his resume, and now he's leading the charge as head of marketing for one of the largest technology providers. So please welcome the head of marketing at Google Cloud India, Krishnan Chatterjee. Hi, Krishnan.
Hi, Peter. Very nice of you to have me, and thank you for the kind introduction.
Yes, when my CMO Samantha set this up, he was really excited, having worked with you in the past. And as I mentioned, you've worked for some amazing, well-known branded companies in your career, as well as obviously as your current role. So I think it'll be a great conversation just to kind of pull all the things that you've learned over the years together. I'd love for this conversation to be around kind of like 2 main themes, I feel, and how long we spend on each one, we'll just see how the natural dialogue goes. The first area that I was hoping to cover is that we can maybe take a look at your view of what an effective marketing engine is. That I think, because of your experiences for some of these like mature companies, I think helps people who are trying to develop one. And maybe some learnings from that. Certainly, I'm sure it's changed over the years. And then the second theme, if you will, that I'd love to cover, given where you work, it's a little bit of the elephant in the room, I feel, is like, how do we see AI starting to impact our working lives, and particularly for those that are working in departments like marketing. There's a lot to cover here. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of changes at Google. So hopefully that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
So let's kick this off, Krishnan. I'd like to get a little bit of your personal journey, kind of to set us up for like how we think that, those experiences have helped you kind of take your position, what you're currently doing today, and give the audience a feel for, some of the things that will be important for them as we look at the marketing engine side. So maybe just give us a little bit of background to how you've kind of got here.
Yeah, so Peter, my work life has actually been 3 decades. And I think how I got here, each decade has a story to tell. So my first decade was really in the CPG world. So I used to work with a company called ITC, which is India's largest CPG company, multiple businesses. It's a conglomerate. And my first half of the decade was in their tobacco business. And the second half, I was part of a startup which created a lifestyle retail business, much like a Banana Republic or Gap. So that was the decade of B2C in my career. By the end of that decade, I got a little bit bored of B2C because, in the CPG business, your moment of truth really is standing in front of a retailer, hands folded, begging him or her to take your product. That is the most powerful instant in your life. And the beginning of my second decade, which was around 2004-5, is when I woke up to this, Adam Smith's invisible hand playing out in India with IT services. It was still fledgling at that time, but I thought something very interesting is happening here. And, all my career has been about chasing discontinuities. And that's when I met up the leadership at HCL Technologies, which at that time was sub $500 million, largely through inorganic moves. And I joined them to lead their marketing function. So that was really the second decade of my life. And that was a extremely interesting journey because HCL Tech in that decade went from that sub $500 million to over $7 billion. Today uh, it's a $13 billion kind of a number. So that was an interesting decade. Uh, uh, Indian IT going global, becoming a source of country competitive advantage to the extent that today India provides about 15 million developers to the world, one of the largest developer populations in the planet. And more interestingly, if I look at India's economy, uh, that's about 1% of the population of the country. But if you look at percentage of GDP that technology as an industry contributes, it's close to 10%. So 1% drives 10%. And that's extremely interesting. And that's something that I found very exciting. It made a genuine difference economically to the country. My third decade is really, I would say, the era of products. So that's when I joined SAP, and today I'm with Google Cloud and so on. But I think the most exciting time is now in this third decade of my professional life, because I think we are in the midst of an innovation super cycle with cloud and AI. And if I go back to my consumer days, when around the year 2000 or in the noughties, I experienced the previous innovation super cycle, which was really the internet and mobile. Uh, it's when I draw a parallel back in those days, uh, when I was launching a fashion retail brand, you know, stated wisdom was nobody would buy clothes online. You cannot buy clothes unless you can touch, feel, and try. And therefore, the way we looked at the internet was the print catalog whacked up on a website. So people can see the product and presumably come to the store and buy it. And lo and behold, Amazon, Google, Airbnb, Uber, they completely showed us a different way of life. And I'm expecting the same to happen even more dramatically now with what AI is going to do to us. And I'm here, with a ringside seat to that particular phenomenon.
Yes, we'll get inside the ring in a while on that. I agree that well, your journey is interesting. I had a career that involved a B2B to C. So we built one of my previous roles. I built websites back in the day. And I felt like B2C was always a little bit ahead in terms of the technology because you didn't know who the person you were trying to talk to really was. So you had to build some personalization around it. So I do think there's some catching up to do on B2B, but I think the catching up can happen and maybe it'll equalize in terms of its capability between the marketing engines of how they're set up, and the learnings that you can get. I think are probably coming from some of that history that you mentioned. So as you obviously look at Google today, and I have to kind of remind myself, I had to drop a note down because Google's an enormous company, right? And people forget that there's elements to it like YouTube or Waymo and Android that go, oh yeah, is that part of Google? They don't even realize it. And then of course, Google Cloud, right, is not just one product, right? You've got, I have to jot this down, as I said, you've got, I think there's compute, there's storage, there's data, there's security, there's networking, there's DevOps. I've probably missed a couple of categories. it's a lot. So you're probably competing with a lot of different players in a lot of different genres, even though it's all kind of under this big high tech space. But you're a multi-product company from multiple facets of various businesses, and obviously on the consumer side for sure. So I'm interested in understanding in your world today. Do you have a sense? Do you get a sense of how your compatriots on the B2C side work with you on the B2B side? Or are you kind of two separate engines? Do you guys look at that separately, or do you try and find commonality? And how would you build that engine out? And what, of course, the other fundamental question is, what do you see as the components of a good marketing engine?
Yeah, so this is a vast question and it's multiple
Yeah.
questions.
So
which
if you
which
if
part would you like
we,
to answer?
so let's go back to the basics of what you see are the components of the marketing engine in a B2B world.
Yeah. Um. So I think I want to take a step back because, Peter, this is again, sort of a world peace question. There is a lot to unpack here. So maybe if we take this in bite-sized chunks and I'll share some insight with you, and maybe on that you can ask and we can deepen the way at least I see the engine. So let me talk first about the value proposition of marketing. So as part of the business, or if I was the business leader in a B2B firm, what value do I expect marketing to bring to me? Why do I invest in marketing at all? And in my experience, there's really three parts that, and all B2B marketers should think of themselves in these three dimensions and see what are they producing. Because if you're not producing on these three dimensions, when we reach the AI subject, I would have serious concerns about the longevity of careers who are not touching at least two out of these three. The first source of value to me is, are you expanding addressable market? So as a marketer, because, in B2B, the GTM largely, exactly like you said, Peter, is a combination of marketing, sales, and service or support or success of some sort. Now, typically the sales engine and the support engine will be extremely operationally driven. So marketing is the one engine which can actually keep expanding the funnel itself as it were. So are you finding new use cases? Are you finding new buying centers? And so on and so forth. So that is value number one. Value number two is, are you from the environment, competitive action, and not your competitors, the customers, competitors, and so on? Are you identifying compelling events in the market to drive the go-to-market around? Because again, remember, the rest of the go-to-market engine, operationally driven, doesn't have a radar sitting out there to say, look, there's a new regulatory action being taken. This creates a new kind of opportunity. So, are you driving compelling events is the second point. And the third point, I think, which is absolutely critical, is, are you driving brand to demand? And if you get stuck in that loop of either saying, I'm a brand guy, brand, prop, because, I have no way of designing a business case for it. Or if you're the guy who's just saying I'm demand and I keep doing events and tactical activities, then you have no strategic import. At the end of the day, I could outsource all of that to an agency. So your ability to connect brand all the way, full stack through to demand, is the third value proposition. So I would say these are three boxes, and whatever it is that you design as the marketing engine has to be able to respond to these three capabilities, propositions, call it what you like.
Sure. So, I mean, overlaying all of that too, you have to be addressing a problem of sorts, right? So you have to be clear about what product you're building and why and what it's actually solving for. So you can get to those three aspects of your addressable market, your compelling reason for driving that, and then it's interesting. You talk about the connection of brand to demand, and in many instances that we kind of engage with a lot of our clients, I think there's quite a big disconnect between brand and demand. It's one person or the other person. There's a pendulum where the money all goes into, all right, we're doing a branding exercise for the first 6 months, and then you try to turn it into, oh, we got to prove this out, and you're rushing to create demand, and you're rushing to create a pipeline, and then there's a waiting period, and you see if the branding worked. So it doesn't seem to be as coherent, I think, in many cases. What would you say?
Yeah, so the reason for that typically, Peter, is actually, let me not ascribe a reason for that. Let me flip it around and tell you what is the unlock on that. And to me, the answer is what I call customer back. If you always start with the customer, you will solve for all three of these boxes. And let me explain why I say that, Typically, I think in B2B, where you get stuck is going product forward. Exactly the point you made about Google Cloud, for instance. So as you said, right, there are AI products, there are security products, there are data products, there are infrastructure products, and what have you. There's even productivity suites like GWS, etc. So if you design your marketing activity to the product, and I dare say many of your clients will have the same issue. My former organization, SAP, same thing, right? You have success factors. You got Ariba, you got S4, you got a whole bunch of stuff. The problem is, it's the same customer who's buying all of this, albeit in different buying centers, different points in time for different business reasons. So if you can just start customer back and say, what's going on with who is my customer? And I think that uh, who is my buyer? Who is my customer? Why are they using me? What else do they have available? You start from there and then work backwards to where your value proposition, your positioning, and there's a framework I find very useful in covering at least brand to demand, which I call identity, position, proposition, and campaign. So let's say, Peter, the two of us meet in a party, and I discover that you're from GE. Now, I don't know anything. You might be from 100 different businesses, but in my head, I'll think Six Sigma and quality, and that's your identity. Now, in our conversation, you end up telling me that you're part of GE's lighting business, and you guys do the best sustainable lighting products in the world. That's positioning. So I realize you're targeting environmentally conscious people, and you are the best at sustainable lighting. So that's the second layer, the positioning layer. Then I tell you, Peter, I've recently bought a house, and my wife colored the drawing room wall burgundy, but we're not getting the color. The lights are not supporting that particular shade coming out. And you say, I got a bunch of people, they understand luminosity angles. I'll send somebody, they'll look at it and solve this for you. That's proposition. And then, Peter, you go back to your office and you figure out, if Krishnan had this problem, there are 1 million new home buyers, and I could package this up and take it to market, and that's campaign. So if you see this brand to demand, this stack works if you are seamlessly moving from identity to position to proposition to your campaign, and in which case everything locks. And if you just spend a moment thinking about it, you'll realize Apple does this really well. And one of the reasons why they have such a powerful position. But once again, if you realize the heart of this stack is the customer, is understanding the customer. And if you understand the customer, you are able to understand unmet needs, which allow you to expand TAM, on which you may have a relevant offering. Secondarily, it's not just unmet needs. You are able to convert the products you're selling to business problems they're resolving. and therefore start crafting solutions, and the solutions may give you significant expansion. A very recent example at Google Cloud is, you may be aware, we've launched a platform called Agent Space. And Agent Space is basically a platform on which companies can build all kinds of agents, including employee level agent builds. But what we did is, and this is something we've done just in India right now, we realized if the biggest use case is going to be employee productivity, then the buying center should be the CHRO. And working with a partner called Quantify, we have launched a CHRO program around a concept called agent thinking. So much like design thinking, but how do you use agent thinking to transform how you look at employee productivity? That's a raging hit with CHROs right now. This is not a buying center Google Cloud was addressing at all in the past. And suddenly with Agent Space, it's become the bit. So that is just to give you an example. So if you go back to the point I made about expansion of TAM, finding the compelling event and connecting brand to demand, all of it starts with the customer. So if you do a great job of identifying the ideal customer profile and work back from that as a marketing organization, you will be able to get these three boxes.
So in your case, or in other cases, there may be multiple customers, right? You have the user customer, right? Who's the person who's going to be dealing with it. You know, when I was selling, give an example, when I was selling software back in the day and I was solving for some warehouse management solution problem, I had to convince the IT guy who was going to implement that over the course of a period of time, as well as the warehouse manager, the logistics manager. So there was multiple constituents. Now, I don't think we did a very good job at it at the time. I think a lot of back again in our second generation of our, second decade of us to kind of put that comparison back to you. I don't think we were very good at personalizing the branding message in the marketing, how to outreach with personalized notations of why it's important. I think at the sales, that was given to the sales guys to figure out. So it feels like a lot of the selling has actually probably moved back into the marketing world, and the pendulum has kind of shifted to that, given, you've kind of broken it out into the various areas around identity, position, and proposition. I think marketing can really take a heavy lift, and then it becomes, does all the budget then become part of that ecosystem for marketing? And are you seeing that, where the shift between sales and marketing and the alignment and the roles of that have moved over the last few years?
So actually, to me, the answer is it depends entirely on the marketing leadership, quite frankly, Peter. So, and it depends. So I define the zone between your organization and your customer's organization as the value zone. So just hold that idea of the value zone. What you're putting in the value zone, if it is product, then the pendulum shifts to sales. If what you're putting into the value zone is actually problem resolution or a solution, the pendulum shifts towards marketing.
Do you think that we should all be heading towards problem resolution as our target?
That's the school I belong to.
Yeah.
Peter, if I look at my overall proposition, I would say even position for Google Cloud, and don't quote me on this, this is my view. But my view is, you're aware that at Google Cloud, we have a statement called a new way to cloud. And the way I interpret that statement is, a new way to cloud is through your business model and not through your infrastructure. So you look at every other cloud provider, their infrastructure plays. Google Cloud is a business model play. Now, the minute I make that statement, in order to sell it to you, I will have to demonstrate to you business model transformation, which is even beyond a solution, right? It is a transformation as opposed to a product. And once again, going back to the point, right, that whole host of products across the entire technology stack. How do they work? They work because the way I would tell this to you is, Google Cloud The new way to cloud through your business model is to a business model which is user-centric, real-world, real-time, and trusted. That's your business model as my customer. Now, if I unpack those words I used, user-centric, real-world, real-time, and trusted, underlying that, I will put all my products. User centricity is where I put AI. Real world is where I put data. Real time is where I put modern apps. Trusted is where I put security.
So that makes a lot of sense for, I think, a lot of B2B products that are out there, right? I think it's less about product and more about problem solving. There's activities that may be the intersection between branding and demand, right? So at the very top of that tree, there's Google knows this a lot. It's probably not your world, but advertising, programmatic. It's maybe targeted. There's tools like LinkedIn, tools like the ones that you guys have, going through the media agencies, and then there's this outreach of content via syndication providers. Some of the things that we do. It still feels like it's a lot about products, and I think we have to do a better job to personalize that to what the problem is. And maybe it's using AI to be able to help, convert those engines that are currently product oriented into problem solving orientation.
There's also a mixed design issue in what you said there, Peter. In my school of thought,
yeah,
which is again now that marketing engine, that demand engine itself. How do you design the engine? Now, let me give you one interesting insight, because I'm going to come back on that largely digital channel. So whether it's search, performance, etc., much of which is for net new logo acquisition, right? So now let's do the math here for a moment. If you take, and we're still in the B2B realm, right? So in the B2B world, you pick up anybody's P&L, and you will inevitably see that 90% plus of that year's revenue is from existing customers. So typically in the B2B world, only 8 to 10% roughly comes from net new. Now, here's the interesting part. When in your mix, you go digital, right? Performance, LinkedIn, this, that, the other, whatever. And if that's the primary part of your mix, you are only playing in the 10%. Whereas the 90% is left with, let's say, things like account-based marketing, executive marketing, customer marketing, which, if you realize, most people do fairly superficial things. There's some, some talk, so it's interesting. And I have a very different view of how I would design a demand engine in B2B. And of the 5 things I put in the design, digital is the last, and actually probably an area I would invest very little in.
I think there's lots of companies, Krishnan, that do the 90% of their modeling towards customer success, account management, and they spend a lot less than they should do on the same capabilities that they actually use in terms of the 10%, the actual difficult part, the acquisition of that. And if the mix was a little bit different, it's the landing and expanding. Now, again, for someone like Google, you have lots of things to upsell to, lots of things to cross-sell to, and frankly, a lot of enterprise application providers or solution providers are in the same boat. There's not as many one-trick ponies. These are usually startup companies, right? So maybe it's a little bit different. But I agree, Forrester would have had a view on this, that the demand unit continues after you've sold, and it continues actually during the sales cycle, which is another thing people tend to take their hand off and give it to sales at a certain point. Hey, I got this. Don't mess my deal up. Traditional kind of enterprise selling. But then after you've won the business, where does marketing go? And I think there's plenty of instances where there's an opportunity to continue the brand, to continue the renewal conversation, to continue the upsell conversation that just isn't part of the mix. That isn't the focus.
Yeah. And you said it perfectly. We could land and expand. And actually, if you think land and expand, the funnels become more like a bow tie. So you come in, win the land, and then you go down, and marketing has to play through that bow tie. And usually it doesn't. In fact, a lot of times marketers exit, let's say at the L2, L3 stage in the top funnel itself. And as you said, sales takes over. That's quite challenging.
So are there things that you guys are doing today or are planning to do tomorrow that will shift anything in terms of what the engine mix will look like? Or do you think it goes back to those three kind of fundamental breakdowns and you've kind of always will speak to that? And then it's just a matter of how you turn the dial plus or minus across, depending on where you are in the product lifestyle. A lot, like the life cycle of what you have. Is it well known? Is it not well known?
Yeah, so, it's a tough one. This is not easy. In fact, it's my biggest current battle. How do I deepen what we do as marketing within accounts? And even as Google, right? Google is a great calling card, but even as Google, it is not easy. So, again, I always like to think about what success looks like first and then work back. At least one learning I've had is for you to really get the bow tie, to play the land and expand game well, then three things which are necessary conditions is, as a business, your champions or advocates need to keep increasing. Second is, whichever business you have, so if you remember, if a problem solution is the better approach than product, you need more and more problems. And finally, whatever it is that you've landed on, you have to deliver that extraordinarily well. And not just have you got to deliver it well, you have to communicate and convince that you have delivered well. So sufficient governance and communication. And now, in all three of these areas, I do believe marketing has a big role to play. The expansion champions, right? Obvious. The discovery of problems, right? How do you pull in more and more buying centers? The CHRO example I took, a few minutes back. And the communication of the delivery excellence that your teams are achieving. But again, right, it means it's a team play. It's not a wait and pass. So there's a
So I think this has been a really interesting conversation, Krishnan, in relation to the engine. In our world, we call the bow tie the infinity loop, which I think probably mean the same thing. But I agree that what you've described there now is that you're including additional stakeholders outside of marketing that have a part to play as part of that infinity loop, right? That's so correct. It is the account managers, but it's also other stakeholders, the people that are dealing in the day-to-day, the week-to-week, and they're as much responsible for marketing the brand, right, as digital marketing has to play in that. In fact, they're probably even more important because they're in the weeds on a day-to-day basis on their weekly updates, their bi-weekly updates. And communicating that well, having consistent messaging, which comes from marketing, by the way. I think you guys have to drive that, and we have to drive that. Is important that it's not just marketing out to brands; it's actually marketing within the organization,
correct,
so that they can be the advocates for the brand.
So it's not easy, Peter. That's why we have jobs.
So that might be a good way to kind of segue into our second topic of the afternoon or the morning, wherever you are. Like we said, you work for one of the biggest technology firms in the world. Google is at the forefront. I'm a daily user of Google, but there's other providers in the marketplace that are kind of competing for this space. And clearly, the rapid level of change that we're seeing from AI is probably scary and exciting at the same time. And in some cases, I think people in marketing might be starting to wake up. Given some recent announcements as to, I've got to think about what my role in this organization is going to be, and if I have a role. So does agentic AI take my job, or actually it's the best thing that ever happened to me because I can do my job 5 times better than I would have had done so 2 years ago. So I'm curious as to your view as to how AI is helping your organization, even within Google, right? It must have an impact. You must be doing this a lot more than others, right? That would be a natural kind of conclusion for now. But like, what do you see in terms of how this affects the workforce, not only in marketing, but in other B2B functions that support marketing?
Yeah. So, so obviously the impact is very, very fundamental, Peter, but, maybe a way to think about it is Iron Man versus Skynet. So is Skynet going to come and knock you out, or will you wear the suit and, sort of become a superhero? I think both are possibilities. And to my mind, let me start with the Iron Man analogy. AI is the suit, or actually, I must say that movie was so prophetic. Was Jarvis was an agent, and and we have a whole bunch of Jarvises available to us. So, at the broadest level, if I look at how we're doing things, or how my team, how we're working with AI. See, as marketers, there's fundamentally 3 areas that we spend our time on. And one area is around analytics and data. The second is around content. And the third really is around some form of campaigns through events, etc. All 3 areas are being fundamentally transformed. And I'm not saying tomorrow, I'm saying today. We're doing this stuff right now.
In Google, right? In your world today. Yeah.
In our world. So firstly, on the data side, we have multiple levels. So we have for our own data. So when I look at governing pipeline progression, how we're doing on the math, the numbers, we are now working with conversational agents. So, I can ask questions like, which particular area of the business is not giving me. So if last week I didn't hit my pipeline goal, where did I not hit it? Why didn't I hit it? Is there a theory? Which segment of customer? Which kind of buying center? All of that is now possible. So when I look at my governance model, which I run weekly, in about 30 minutes on a Monday, I know exactly which point has a problem, where I need the team to focus, which part of the business, down to which account manager or which sales territory, micro territory, we need to do something on. All of that is clarified. So that itself, historically, we could not have done at that frequency. The second area is on content. In B2B, as you're aware, Peter, we don't have the sort of privilege of working with hordes of agencies, paying them lots of money to devise content, etc. But now, if you look at the kind of tools we're using, so if I talk Google, Imagen for image creation, VO3 is absolutely insane. I think I doubt if Hollywood will shoot too much longer at the level it's going. But so we are able to now come up, mock up ads, create videos. The beauty of VO3 today is when I prompt it, along with the video I want, it comes with the voiceover, multiple languages, and with the soundtrack. And it's doing all of this literally in minutes. So, so content now, all of us across Google marketing have started driving, even those who work with agencies nowadays, what they're doing is they use the tools to build the advertising or communication content they want and give it almost like an end product to the agents, which means now your iteration, your loops, those are vanished. You're pretty much, go from the first, the brief itself to the finished product instantly. Even if you're outsourcing, I don't, or my team doesn't. So that's on the content side. Now, on the campaign side, in the way I look at campaigns, Peter, in B2B is you basically campaign broadly in three sort of streams, which is value, volume, and run rate. Value is where you're targeting your big deals and such like, or big accounts. Volume, typically you would do through the partner channel. So not the large deals, but some significant ticket value, but deals which are replicable. And run rate are those deals which you are selling almost on a credit card swipe. Uh, so Google Workspace, let's say in my case. So in the value channel, one of the biggest aspects of driving impact with customers is really insight, is relevance, is personalization. So when I look at Gemini Deep Research, Peter, the kind of things we do. Recently, we in India, we did what we call the Leaders Connect events, which is our executive C-suite kind of event. And we had about 50 C-suite customers speaking. For every single customer, and nobody in my team, I have done documents around how their businesses will be transformed through AI, down to, and let me take the example of the CEO of a Forbes company. The document was generated while I was on call with him. It took 4 minutes. It was an 18-page document. It broke down their process from recipe generation to manufacturing franchising operations, to inbound supply chain, outbound, trade marketing, everything. And it demonstrated the AI intervention in each part of those sub-processes. And it also gave Google Cloud case studies from across the world in that specific area. That document took me about 4 minutes. I did it for 50 CEOs. This CEO I'm referencing, the food CEO, while on the call, he took a look at it. He said, I'd have paid, say, McKinsey and their ilk $1 million for these 18 pages. So we're doing that every 3 to 4 minutes. You can do it. It's infinitely scalable. On the volume side with partners, we have now built an AI solution which allows a partner to figure out, to basically look at an organization that they're going after and everything that they need, the entire playbook to go after the organization is made available. On the run rate side, what we have now started doing is we are productionizing educational programs, adoption programs at scale. We just built one called Bring AI to Work. In fact, I was doing that myself. We are building it. There's somebody in my team, single-handed use, put this together. 10,000 people have already taken it. We rolled it out 8 days back. So suddenly the ability to shape content in that run rate channel, which is of relevance to millions, we're doing something else. You remember you made that point about multiplicity of buyers. So you have users and you have economic buyers. The easiest way to look at it in our business is users are developers. 15 million developers in this country. You can check up on this. We've created, somebody in the team created this program, one lady, called the Gen AI Academy. The Gen AI Academy is the journey which takes a developer from developer to an AI certified developer, which obviously increases valuation and many other good things happen. That program launched about a month back. It's already got 260,000 developers who are participating in these kind of numbers we have also not seen in the past. But all of it is being pulled off by a team of everything I've described to you, by a team of 3 people.
So that's, like I said, it's exciting and it's scary, right? For the people that are in the field and they're looking to how they become and stay relevant. And I think it's not just on the marketing and selling side. I think it's on the buying side, right? So what's going to stop the agents doing the buying and taking some of that scale out? But clearly, if we just look at what you just mentioned, what I'm taking from this is the ability to scale, right? Is exploded. And if we look at our jobs and feel like at the end of the day, the end of the week, I didn't really get to half the things that I thought I was going to be able to get to. One would hope that whatever you thought you could get done, there's a better chance of it getting done now from the beginning to the end, because you have that ability to scale, because you can take on more work. I mean, if we ask our clients about content and they say, well, we haven't got the ability to generate, I mean, I'm talking about in the recent past, we don't have that ability to generate content. Can you help me with that? Or can you point me to where we would go? Clearly the tools are out there to be able to generate the right content, to be able to personalize the right content, and to have that message and to be able to manage it. I don't think it takes everybody out of the loop. I just think it takes a lot of people into a place where they can do a better job. And maybe you're an extreme case at Google because you have to lead with that technology and prove it out. But I think for the rest of us, I absolutely see that the way I would simply put it, and I'll give you the chance to kind of give me your opinion on it, is that I think AI actually presents a great opportunity for people that will adopt it and understand it and see it as their cohort in being able to do their job better. And there'll be other things to do. Like we've had it through the Industrial Revolution. We had it when Microsoft came out with Excel or Google came out with Sheets. It's not as if it took out every CPA or financial analyst out of a business. It actually made people more productive, right?
Is the Iron Man analogy then? So, Peter, maybe a good way to think about this is typically when you think cost to serve, you start on, that's where the threatening noise comes, right? For a moment, and I think this is what every innovation super cycle has done, the capacity to serve. What you described just now is the fact personalization requires capacity to serve, which you just do not possess. So let me take a client example just to explain this. Recently, with a client in India called Manipal Hospitals, we used AI and we did a project. It was one hospital in Bangalore. But what happened there is quite interesting. The nurse shift handover process used to take something like 70 minutes. That has now reduced to 20 because of AI. Now imagine India has a population of 300,000 nurses. When this rolls out, 300,000 nurses saving 50 minutes every single day as they change shift. Imagine the capacity to serve expansion, because the reality is India does not have the capacity to provide healthcare to 1.5 billion people. In fact, at current capacity, if I look at doctor, nurse, etc., you probably have to quadruple your current capacity to start achieving a scale. And you can now put this, the world doesn't have enough food to feed 9 billion people as and when we get there, which is not, which doesn't seem to be too far away. So all I'm saying is we have enormous capacity to serve issues, exactly the point you made at your level of scale, which is you say there are 50 things to do in the week. You can only do 20 because you don't have capacity to serve. We are going to see massive expansion in capacity to serve. Therefore, things like personalization, which hitherto were impossible because of that facet, will now become possible.
And it is not just about scale. I probably was probably unfair to the analogy, because I do think it's about the quality and the value proposition, right? So whatever you do, you don't have as much time being spent on the mundane or the things that you have to do personal research on, and it's really around putting your either your hands on the ground, and if it's a civil engineer or a nurse, as you said, you know, those knowledge-based workers that actually do things and interact with people, they'll just do a lot more of it, which is kind of what they want to do anyway. They just certainly, I know for a fact that nurses don't really want to do administration. And a lot of us don't want to do administration. So if there's productivity elements to AI that's happening today, I'm all in. I really am. I mean, I think a lot of us should be. So it's exciting. As I said, I think people just have to understand, you know, how they adopt it, where they see use for it. We probably need to take a look as executives to say, all right, how much do we need to change now in terms of our mix? Because there is a cost to this. It's not free. I do think, you know, big players will make it extraordinarily commoditized in terms of pricing, so you can actually adopt this to help people.
And that's happening. Well, maybe an interesting idea to close this with is, if you know Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, a gentleman who won the Nobel Prize last year for his work on AlphaFold. So Demis and his team really drive Google's advancements on AI. And so Demis recently had an interview on 60 Minutes, and something he said there I found very interesting, because the interviewer asked him this question, that ultimately, Demis, in your opinion, what differentiates human and AI? And his answer, I'm paraphrasing, was imagination. So the human being will always bring imagination, and that is not something Demis believes that AI agents will do. So I think what you're saying, right, as you solve for these problems, people who invent a new future which doesn't exist today, that's kind of work all of us will be doing. And for marketing people, that should be, you know, straight up their alley.
Yes, exactly. The future is bright. We just don't know what it is yet. Until we get an AI bot that will tell us what the future is. Krishna, this has been great. Before we wrap up, I wanted to kind of, given that you spent a lot of time giving us breakdowns in a very simple trilogy of answers, if you will, I'm going to ask you maybe 3 questions, and you can give me up to 3 answers, just to kind of get us a little bit more insight into your personal persona. So these are random questions. I'll throw it out there, so hopefully this will make sense. So curious to see, if I were to ask you in a rapid fashion, 3 musical acts or events that you wished you had been a part of, but just didn't get the chance to be at. Either you weren't born or you just couldn't get there. Any ideas?
Yeah. So a very simple answer for me: the Grateful Dead. Leonard Skinner. They passed away before I got into this act, and I would say the third really would be, Pink Floyd at their most magnificent. So once again, now that Gilmore Waters are apart, so none of those 3 are available to me, unfortunately.
So it sounds like 1971, 1972 is your era of music.
Yeah, that is my decade. You are absolutely right.
Hotel Mars, I was listening to that at the weekend. And Pink Floyd, tremendous. So I like your musical taste. How about some 3 places that you haven't been to, like on a bucket list, that you are hoping to go to?
So, I'm fortunately or unfortunately, Peter,
You've been everywhere.
Wherever I am, I'm happy there. So I never really feel the need I need to go somewhere. But just to answer your question, the first I would say is Arunachal Pradesh, which is at the northeast of India. It's an extraordinary state. It is also, you need permits and things to get in there. But one dream of mine is to go there and spend some time. The second I would say is Chiang Mai in Thailand. So I think
I've been there.
yeah, unfortunately, we always end up going to the beachy places. I really want to go into the hills of Thailand, love the culture, love the food, and so on and so forth. And the third area I would say is probably Ireland,
It's not
because
a bad place.
Yeah,
It's because I'm from there. You're being very kind.
just because there's so much music and such great vocals come out of that place, just to go and hang out and figure out what's going on there.
I'll recommend Ireland. I'll give you that. Lots of crack, as they say, back home, and the music is great. And so are the people, I hope. You just have to bring your raincoat. Make sure. The third question I'll finish up with you, Krishnan, is just some things that three things you've read or a podcast that you've listened to that you found interesting.
Yeah, so actually, I don't listen to too many podcasts. I do read a lot, Peter. So books that I keep going back to, or I can pick up and read at any time. One is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I thought was truly a remarkable piece of writing.
Yeah.
The second is of Mice and Men, where and there's a bit of a personal angle there as well. I sort of empathize with the context in that. And the third is Catch-22, which I find increasingly more and more relevant every year that passes.
I've not read. This is this a war? Is this a war novel? I'm trying to remember.
Which one?
Catch-22.
Yeah, Catch-22. Yeah. It does have a war in it.
Yeah,
but that's not really the. You should read it.
I will. I haven't read that. I'll write that down. Krishnan, I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope you have as well.
I did, Peter. Wonderful chatting with you, and I look forward to meeting you sometime physically in the flesh, perhaps in one of those bucket list places.
Well, if you do make it to Ireland, I'll certainly meet you there. But good to catch up. Thanks, Krishnan.